the open records, and I call it to order. We have one agenda item, a presentation by
Me?
Brian.
Yeah. Do you want to do slides? I always hate next slide. I hate doing that. So if you good?
Yeah, no
Okay.
worries.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. So Dan, Kelly, I apologize. I don't change my presentation from what you've had very much. I know, but we're gonna change it up a little bit. I'll ask questions through this one as opposed to just talk the whole time.
Quiz.
Yeah, okay, so Open Government Trainings Act, enacted in 2014, I can't believe it's been 12 years now. The OPMA, the Open Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Act have existed for a long time. There was a number of cases that were filed for violations of those acts, and the defense by the public agencies and the elected officials were, we don't know. How are we supposed to know how are we supposed to know what we're supposed to be doing if we haven't been told? So the legislature decided to make it a requirement, so that cuts out that defense. It never really was a defense in the first place. The other part that was leading into why this has become a legal requirement, there were some really bad actors. I do throw the other side of the state under the bus when I say that, because they were typically over there in a different area code, but there were some really bad violations of OPMA acts. A lot of public records case law, not intentional violations. I think we'll talk about one case in here that was clearly not an intentional case, but it's a pretty heavy precedent. So legal requirement for now 12 years. Let's go ahead and just jump 2 slides. We'll start with the Public Records Act. The PRA, anybody remember when it was enacted? 1971. Voter initiative. Anybody remember what was going on in 1971? Watergate, yeah, pretty big time in the country in terms of and even leading into those years, just people questioning what's going on with our government and why don't we know what's going on, right? So pretty big voter movement across the country to begin requiring on public records that the public have access to them. I've highlighted the red language in there because that really is kind of one of the most direct and responsive pieces of legislation I think we have in the RCW, other than maybe state constitution, and that is actually prevalent through anything you do. That the city exists because the people have put it into power. You exist because they voted you in, they put you into power. So the same thing, public records, you are an instrument of the public. The people insist on remaining informed of what's going on that way. Great principles, principles can often be used in other ways, which we can talk about as well. But it's a really key provision of the Public Records Act. Read my mind, good for you. Public Records Act applies to state government agencies barely, and that's only because that's been pushed through the state in recent years. But definitely local government agencies, cities, counties, public, special purpose districts, library districts, you name it. And then the functional equivalent of public agencies. So what you've seen, there's a number of agencies. Well, our risk pool is a perfect example. The risk pool exists as an interlocal agreement amongst cities and special purpose districts in Washington. They're also subject to the Public Records Act because they exist amongst other public agencies and then make decisions as to how the insurance and risk is mitigated. So, okay. 3 general requirements, and this is under the Public Records Act. We'll talk about archiving next. 3 general requirements to be a public record. Must be in writing. I'm going to air quote writing for you because we'll come back to that. The writing must relate to the conduct of government or the performance of any governmental or proprietary function, and it's either prepared, owned, used, or retained by the agency. So if you prepare it, if you take ownership of it, or it's in your files, it's a public record. So it's pretty much anything that involves the city from a writing standpoint. Okay, let's go to the next one. Writing's very broadly construed. which it's basically any means of recording. So it's not just written as we think, handwritten or typed or something like that. It's letters, words, pictures, photographs, videos, you name it. Any sort of memorialization of anything is a writing. Social media posts, text messages, we'll come back to that. Computer data, the metadata that, probably 10, 15 years ago, people started to realize you can learn a lot about what's going on in the government when you understand the metadata or the information behind the document on the system. You can tell who created it, who revised it, when they did it, what was going on. That's all been deemed to be part of the definition of a writing under the Public Records Act. In terms of what public records include, on your home computer, if you're using it for city-related business, on a non-agency email account, if you're using it for city-related business, social media, again, that's been something that's been played about in the local media and the jurisdiction across the way over there in terms of what constitutes a public record and whether posting on social media. Even if you're asking citizens, what do you think about this? If you're using your own social media website or platform, I guess it's not a website, I don't know, to solicit or otherwise engage in discussion about city business, that can subject that social media account. So something you just want to be careful. Nobody's asking you to squelch your means of communication with the public. Just means that you got to maintain some records of it in terms of if the city receives a public records request for that information or those pages, we have to be able to provide it is all.
So even, even like, so cell phone, if my neighbor, says, hey, could you, da-da-da-da-da, whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Yep. Yeah, so
Saving text messages then?
gotta save them. Yeah, we'll get to the archiving's the next chapter on this, but yeah, definitely preserving them, having them accessible in case we have to respond to a public records request. This conversation always, for years, the city didn't use city emails for elected and appointed officials. That kind of moved into the realm of creating the city email account. This part of the conversation always kind of creates the discussion, well, should you have a city phone for it? And that means, Kelly, you've got a private phone, you got a work phone, and you got a city phone. That's fun to carry around, right? So that always is part of that discussion, so.
And you were gonna say computers generally, just not the city thing.
Yeah, if you're using your home computer for emails, for.
Well, how else do I open up the city mail?
Yep. A lot of agencies have gone to tablets, things like that, just to keep everything off of someone's personal computer.
But it just makes that correspondence public records. It doesn't literally make your device all of a sudden like, oh, I want to see your thesis, so that you
No.
submit it.
It does, because what happens is the court will subpoena your computer. You gotta haul your computer in because the person who alleges that you've got public records on your hard drive, they don't
I
know
see what
what's
you're
there,
saying.
right? So there's a pretty infamous back and forth between a council member in University Place over by Tacoma that, he swore up and down that he had nothing on his computer. The court said, show me. He was ordered to bring it in. He wouldn't do it. City got sanctioned. He finally brought it in, and yeah, there was all kinds of city-related stuff on his computer, other stuff as well. So I mean, that's part of the the balance of how much do you lose your personal identity as an elected official, right?
So Brown, is it a good practice to have a tablet
Yeah.
that we just, it's limited to city type things?
Be a great idea.
Okay.
Yes, definitely worth discussion by the council. And I think if you were to think about instituting it for the council, I think that's something you'd want to carry over in the rest of the appointed commissions and councils as well. It's just a good practice to have everything right there, as we're seeing with public records requests. Having it all on one piece of equipment as opposed to going to the email accounts and downloading it and saving it into Outlook files is really, it's valuable in terms of time and expense responding to a public record.
But still,
It
if
would
a
just be,
public
here you
person
go.
say, you gotta have something on your private computer.
Well, if you don't, if we're not using a separate tablet or a separate computer for city business, yeah, that's inherent, you're accessing it somehow. If we were to adopt a policy that said your city business would be conducted on this piece of equipment and that piece of equipment only, we've got a defensible basis for me to say, council member, have you used your personal computer? No. Council member, have you used your personal computer? No. We got a defensible basis, and the fact that a member of the public says, I don't agree, I don't believe them. They
We
don't,
provided a alternative
Yeah.
that we can,
here's the policy, here's how the city conducts its business. So,
that's fair.
So for, like, right now, since this policy isn't in, so when I was getting ready for the first training thingy, I of course did it by Zoom
Mhm.
off my home
Mhm.
little laptop.
Yep.
So if something were to come up and it's like, okay, Councilmember Seifert did, whatever, I want everything that she's done with the city, even that type of stuff, I would have to, I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
obviously it's open, I
Yeah,
can disclose
yeah,
it.
it would, the way a public records request would proceed is, we get the request, we come to you, we say, okay, we need all these emails or all these documents. You provide them. Not trying to scare you, like everybody's gonna get called into court and have to bring their computer in. The only way that typically proceeds is if the other side is incredibly obstinate and says, I don't believe you, city, or, they have reason to know that a document or a record exists on your computer and it hasn't been provided. And we'll touch on that in this too. Okay?
Can I ask a question about so this really would be outside the email thing though, because we have backup for, you know what I'm saying, like, we have backups for those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, but if you're using your home computer to access the city email, I mean, I don't know how you get it.
But I mean, you know what I'm saying, if they say, well, I don't think you tendered all your emails, we'll go, okay, well, let's go to the backup system that's got all of it, and we'll just query to see it, so the real, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To me, it would feel like a hard one,
You didn't keep a backup. You didn't keep a true and accurate backup. That's the allegation. I mean, you'll never win the fight, right? Yeah, yeah. It's allegation.
a
upon
third
allegation.
party doing the backup?
Because go back to that very first statement, well, you don't have to go backwards, but chapter shall be liberally construed and its exemptions narrowly construed to promote this public policy and ensure that the public interest will be fully protected. So that, the court always goes back to that statutory construction, liberal construction to ensure that, people have had access or have access to the public record, so.
So if we had a tablet, then I would need to have the Outlook. It's Outlook we use, right?
Well, he's saying you'd access your Outlook from the tablet, not from your computer.
I could get rid of Outlook on my computer altogether.
Correct,
That sounds glorious.
Right?
That
correct.
sounds awesome to get rid of that.
You just have it on your
Use
tablet.
Outlook except for
For this.
STA and here.
Is STA still using personal tablets or electronic
Well,
means?
I don't know,
They were at one time.
I don't know what they're doing internally, but yeah, my council minutes and Carl has something to board every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Those all come on email.
Oh, okay, so you're,
But I have to sign it, it pops up because it's in the Millwood.
right, right. Well, it's something that, I mean, certainly to explore. There's a number of agencies that are doing it, just simply for that reason, to keep everything consolidated and outside of your personal business.
So Brian, other agencies, it would be a city provided or a
Mhm.
municipal provided tablet,
Yep, city-owned,
Amazon something
Yeah.
yep.
that you would have, and then you would return
Mm-hmm,
at the end of your term.
yeah.
Not through Amazon, through our third party IT consultant, cause there's a discount there if we package it, but yeah.
Whoever we do.
So policy would be no personal use of that piece of equipment for,
Exactly.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
okay, administrative requirements, perfect, thank you. The statute requires appointment of a public records officer. That's your line, that's what I threw it to you.
I can't even
Oh,
see it,
sorry.
there's like so
Yeah,
much
We
glare on
appoint,
it.
so the city must appoint a public records officer.
Oh, I will do that at this thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So requests, this is a key point that, that I have to typically deal with on a regular basis on public records requests. All requests under Washington law must be for an identifiable public record, which is different than FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act in the federal side. They can provide you information, they don't have to provide you the underlying document. We're very much opposite, and again, it goes back to what was going on, which FOIA was in existence back in the early '70s, but it goes to the statement at the outset of the public's entitled to know what that document or that record says. You, the government, don't tell me what the information is. We're entitled to see what it actually is. This also means, though, that we don't create public records simply to consolidate information into we can, and that's often done just as a matter of expediency, but we're not obligated to create a public record to respond to a request. Fee schedules, I'm gonna run through just some of these other most basic things or things that aren't pertinent to you necessarily. Key on the bottom though, we must provide the fullest assistance to inquirers. And so what that means is that if we get a request, there's certain requirements that we have to fulfill on the procedural side. We have to maintain a log of all requests that come in that identifies the requester, and we're gonna institute that, or at least renew it. I know we've done it in the past. Keeps all that information and how we disposed of it, so we can provide that out. The next slide is in terms of providing assistance. We can't ask the person, we just have to presume that the reason they're asking for it is valid, except in one instance, which is obtaining lists of information or list of individuals for commercial purposes is prohibited. That's typically, you're gonna see the backflow prevention specialist and the sprinkler blowouts wanna come in and get a list of your customers so they can then go out and solicit them for services. That's prohibited by law. The bottom part, the request can come in any form, even if we adopt our own formal rules or our documentation, and we still have the obligation to provide the fullest assistance to inquirers making the request. Again, we have a written request form. I think the city's form is one of the better ones that I know agencies use. It's concise, it has the right information, but it also creates that perfect record for creating the log of requesters. But a requester does not have to use that. And again, in the day of emails, you're starting to see more and more just email requests, and they'll tell you, this is all you're getting from me. I'm not gonna fill out your form. Again, I encourage the use of a written request form simply for the record-keeping purposes, though. It's really good that way, but it's only advisable, not required.
Can we share just for your guys' own, with the stuff that was going on at the beginning? We do have a written request form and it's kept up at the office, at the front office desk. And if we give it to people and they say no, we actually just start filling it out for them as they start talking to us. Because you do want to capture all the information that you can, because if you just say, no, I'm requesting, and there's no date, that they're gonna show back up, or we have no way of so we do it as a matter of just keeping track of our stuff.
Yeah, the Washington Administrative Code has a provision that presumes that you'll do that if a verbal request comes in at the desk or on the phone. Phone can be a little bit more difficult though. What I do encourage to try to have someone at least come in and have a face-to-face with you so that we can make sure that we know what they're asking for, right? So, the administrative process is on the response on the next one. We have 5 days to respond to the request. Response is typically just an acknowledgement. If we know where the document is, the response in that 5-day period is, here's your public record, thank you. More times than not, the nature of the request will require more than 5 days. I think what I've tried to encourage clients to do is not have a standing acknowledgement, and we anticipate we can respond within 60 days. Well, that's not, one document can be 1 day, 100 documents could be 60 days. When you're starting to just say, we're gonna take 60 days, that's starting to move away from the fullest extent required by law. And there are some instances where you deny the request. Typically, it's only denied at the outset when when the document doesn't exist. I was telling the mayor, I spent 4 hours today at the airport responding to public records requests for them. 3 of those requests were for contracts that the airport board had not yet awarded and may not award. The record doesn't exist, so the request is denied, and there's no obligation to have a continuing or standing response sitting out there. So I closed it out. If the board decides to issue a contract next month, then they can submit another public records request, so. So in terms of responding, touch on these real quick. The key is, we've got to respond unless a specific exemption applies. I can't tell you how many provisions of the Public Records Act now exist where it talks about exemptions to disclosure. A party has the right to inspect and/or copy, so they can inspect and copy, they can inspect them, or they can just ask for a copy, and usually it's send me by email the copy. No charge for inspecting a public record. The one thing that is a little bit burdensome is I do recommend clients don't just hand someone a box of documents and say, here's our council room, go look at them. Because those are your originals typically. So you usually have to proctor or observe somebody reviewing the public records. That takes staff time, right? So, unlike Idaho, which allows for a reasonable charge for the time spent searching, Washington has no charges for searching and looking for responsive public records. And there is a statutory amount on copying unless you're gonna go through some other process, the charges for copies, unless you're gonna go through another process to determine it. Years ago, Tom Richardson went through that process and determined actually it was, the city was better off to charge the statutory amount than to charge what it costs for its ink, its copier, and the electricity. So, we've always just kind of stuck with the statutory amount. The adequate search side, that's the next one. This is the one I wanted to talk about. This has kind of been developing over case law over recent years. Must conduct a search reasonably calculated to uncover all relevant public records. So the key is it's on the search that's done. It's not the results of the search, right? It's only has to be adequate, doesn't have to be perfect. But the court does presume that you're gonna sit down and try to think about where would I find these public records if they existed. There was a case 2011 involving Spokane County. Won't go into all the details on it. Long story short, the requesting party knew a document existed because it had been provided to that requesting party. They served a public records request for any and all documents related to the matter. County came back and said, we don't have any. And they said, yeah, you do, because I have a copy of at least one of them right here. County was flabbergasted. They didn't know what to do. They got sued. It turned out that the documents were on the hard drive of an archived computer that had been put down in the basement at the county courthouse, and they got hammered. Financial penalty. The court said that was an inadequate search. You should know that if this document related to that department and that department went through an IT upgrade, you should know that and you didn't dispose of the other computers, or you didn't archive the hard drives, you should know. That's a lot of hopscotching to get there. That's seems more than an adequate search. In my mind, if I'd been in county shoes, I wouldn't have been happy with the result, but that is the standard now, so.
Gee, I wish I could sue myself, cause I know there's a presentation I did 2011.
I know.
I presented it at a workshop. Christine Collins also presented it out. I got hers. I have it in print. I can't find the damn thing on the computer.
Yeah.
I can have hers on the computer, and mine should be right next to it. It's not there.
No, that's exactly right. So, exemptions, let's go to the next one real quick. Exemptions we'll touch on, like I said, there's a list of exemptions in the Public Records Act. The key takeaway from this slide is a public record is rarely, if any, exempt in its entirety. If it is, it's typically on some of the law enforcement investigatory records. If there's if the investigation is still ongoing and charges haven't been filed, there's a pretty broad exemption there. But more times than not, portions of that document are gonna be subject to disclosure. So that means the redaction portion of, it used to be taking a black marker and lining it out, now it's taking a PDF and blocking it out, but it's a really tedious process. I think you'll see, if you see transmissions from me in the subject line, you'll always see attorney-client privilege if I think it's privileged. And if it's a draft document, you'll see capital D, capital R, capital A, capital F, capital T draft, because drafts are not a public record. That's not a final version of the document. So I use that, which helps lessen the search burden on that, so. And then denial of a request, we gotta explain why. If we are relying on an exemption, we have to tell the requester why it's exempt, and that's usually in the form of an exemption log, or if they're all exempt under the same basis, a letter back to them. But a lot of agencies get hung up on just redacting and not providing and not explaining the why. So it's subject to exemption. So key there, exemptions are narrowly construed. So if there's ever any doubt, general case law is, disclose your host, kind of a viewpoint, so. And why disclose if your host? Well, it's $100 each day for each public record, and each page of this council packet is one public record. So that adds up pretty quickly. If you got 100 pages per day, I'm not good at math, but that's, after a year, you're looking at, there's a comma and some zeros in that potential. Now it's up to $100. The court has some discretion that way. And I think the courts they've been erring on the side of not going up to the maximum amount unless it's egregious or it's a repeat violator agency. So the other part is it's a cottage industry. There are certain attorneys that know how to bring Public Records Act claims, and they get their attorney's fees paid. So, and then again, just kind of how the case law evolves over time. This case is only 2 years old. But in the interest of the liberal construction, the state Supreme Court in 2024 said, well, acts liberally construed, and the agency is obligated to assist the requester to the fullest extent allowed by law. So that means the agency now has to tell the party that the request is closed, has to advise them of the 1-year statute of limitations, and then the court actually said, and you're obligated to answer follow-up questions within a reasonable time frame. So there's the potential for a continual back and forth with an agency and a requesting party. But we have canned language that we close out our requests with that we've been using that meets the Cousins standard. So. The other aspect of public records is the retention requirements in Washington. Very similar in definitions in terms of public records remain the property of the state of Washington. As you're exiting office or as things begin to pile up in storage, we're encouraged to go through those and either purge those that have expired on the retention log or transfer to the state archivist for retention. There is the core manual, I mentioned that. It's just the basic core standards of personnel records shall be kept this long, resolutions and ordinance shall be kept this long, accounts payable documents this long. And August 21, that was 197 pages. I went back and looked at the last one that was August of 24, just in a 2-year time, the total number of pages has creeped up to 221 pages. So the core guidelines is as core as it gets. It's pretty intense. So the public record definition here, very similar. It's made by or received by an agency in the state of Washington. We're an agency, city is. So it's anything we made or received that we're holding on to. The fact that you receive it means you're under the retention policy. You're going to hold on to it. In connection with transaction of public business, there's really not much that the city receives that isn't related to the transaction of public business. Maybe if the city allows personal use of email accounts for de minimis reasons, that would fall outside of that. And if it meets the first two criteria, then it's a public record that needs to be retained or managed. This is kind of just the giveaway. It's regardless of form or characteristics. And, you know, interestingly enough, the law recognized early on that records aren't just in written form. There's a number of different ways that they're maintained, audio, visual, you know, just about any sort of recording that way. I've told this horror story to purge or not purge. We'll skip that because it's a fun story, but it takes a little time. But worst case scenario is if you don't purge your documents in accordance with the schedule, it can come back to haunt the agency. And essentially, I had a client who had a supervisor that maintained a desk file for an employee that didn't meet standards. And that desk file, you know, desk file is, I'm the supervisor, I'm keeping all my notes and how this person did, but I'm not gonna give them to HR and put them in the HR file because I don't want those in the HR file. People shouldn't see those. These are really bad things. Bad policy to follow. Turns out that that supervisor ended up getting subpoenaed into a first-degree felony case down in Kittitas County for the employee that they had the desk file on. Now, that person would not have been subpoenaed because he wouldn't have had those desk file notes had he purged them 12 years earlier when it was scheduled for purging. But so retention's not always the best thing. We know it takes a lot of time and resource to go through and try to clean the files up, which is why a lot of agencies just don't do it. So, OPMA, Open Public Meetings Act. This one hits you every month, right?
So,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
before we go forward, so in terms of emails, so emails that we have, questions that we've submitted to city staff, how long should we keep that? Is it indefinite? Is it for our term?
Well, if you've submitted it to city, we have it.
Okay.
So that's, and if ever challenged about, well, no, I wanna see the email that has Councilman Straven's name on top. Here it is. He sent it, we got it, and this is what it is.
Okay.
It's hard to say how long because it really comes down to the nature of the topic or the issue of the email as opposed to the form of the document. Some topics might be longer in retention than others. I think the general rule of thumb, because retention of documents is very expensive. So, you know, most agencies don't have a document retention system. The general rule of thumb is you should probably at least have access to those for at least 3 years. Doesn't excuse a retention violation, but it certainly aligns more with a statute of limitations issue for legal purposes.
So in terms of, we get what would be considered spam email. We don't respond to it, right? It's promotional. I can delete that
Oh,
immediately. I haven't responded, any sort of thing like that.
like from Association of Washington
Yeah,
Cities.
exactly, all of it.
Yeah.
But if I get something from, a question from a citizen, hold on to it indefinitely or 3 years, 4 years, something like that. Even if it's
Adam.
past the issue.
Yeah,
if
as a
it's
matter of
resolved.
safety, let's go 3 years.
Okay, that's a good
It
clarification.
may be longer.
Okay.
I just want everybody to understand it. The retention schedule may be longer,
Okay.
depending on the nature of the topic. But 3 years at least gets you into a statute of limitations expiration.
What if it's-
Thank you for that question, cause that's the same thing I have, like when I have, all those things that are on your non-focus, like someone's just blast, I'm on someone's thing.
Yeah.
I delete liberally from that, cause these aren't even things that were directed towards me, these were just spammers and stuff. But I was unsure, and then also, if I can just, ask the clarifying, what I heard from him is if I send something to info, or, you know, I'm sending something to Bridget, I can delete, I have not, but I could theoretically delete that, cause there should be a record because it has gone to the office or something.
Yeah, I would ask you not to,
Okay,
but if we
That's
got a
fine, I haven't.
request, we're gonna start on Bridget's computer before we're gonna ask you to go to your computer.
Okay.
We're gonna start on the city's computer system. So,
So for the last 2 months, I've been getting, I don't know how many, a ton of personal email, individuals writing to me as an STA board member, encouraging, you know, the renewal of our assessment, our tax. You know, our board meetings usually have 2 or 3 people who come every month, have the same, and they're very good comments. We had, I quit counting at 15. The last board meeting I was at, you know, and some of them same comments, but those are individuals writing to me as a board member. I should not just be deleting those.
let me preface it with, you probably wanna confer with Megan, since she's the STA council. But I would not delete those.
Okay.
Here's a good example, recent example, is we were still filling public records requests through the city's, the mayor at millwood.com, millwoodcitymillwood.com email for the time when Kevin Freeman was on the Board of Health. And there was some administrator issues being bannered about in the public, and health officer issues being bannered about in the public. We were still, I think we finally provided those over to the health districts or the Board of Health's attorney, March, February,
Yeah.
because they were still getting public records requests that they needed to fill in relationship to that back during 2021.
And that does, I think, create some ambiguity, because some people, and I've even heard, you shouldn't be using that, you shouldn't be using, well, that's how they've gotten to know us. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they only knew me because so I think that there's a gray area, and you're available if we ever need that clarity. Like, obviously, if I'm initiating some kind of dialogue that's outside of city business, you know, like I shouldn't be corresponding about like my day job or anything like that. But there is some ambiguity around our board appointments. Do you know what I'm saying? Things that we sit on, and is that something you want us to go directly to you, or is that something you want to deal with at this meeting? Because
Well, like in Dan's case, if STA gets the request, STA has the obligation to fulfill it. But what ends up happening is the city of Millwood gets the public records request because you're a city of Millwood council member, and therefore they want any and all, it's fine because it relates to the transaction of public business. It doesn't have to be the city's business. So that's where we get into this problem, is when we're answering for the acts of other organizations because you've been appointed to sit on them.
because I've heard people say like, well, maybe, you know, because the example that you gave is something that people know about, you know, and so I've heard, oh, shouldn't have been using that. I'm like, really? But I mean, some of these board appointments only exist because we're in
Yeah.
our public office.
Exactly it.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like, yeah, if I'm like volunteering at like my kid's PTA, I shouldn't have those emails come in. But if I sit on like one of these local jurisdiction boards, it's precisely because I was a council member, precisely because I am mayor.
Yeah.
And so we could keep those in separate file.
Could.
Why we could keep them.
Yep.
So rather than,
STA.
and I don't do that. My regular list is boogled up for stuff I've received for forever. But I was a bit thinking about that myself, because of some personal stuff I'd like to keep, but I don't know if I need to keep it on.
Yeah.
And right in front, I could copy it, put it in a file someplace.
Yeah. At one time,
long as I
STA
remember
was
what
at the
y'all did.
forefront of maintaining personal tablets and personal email, or not personal, STA tablets and organizational tablets and email addresses. They were kind of leading the charge here on doing that. I don't know how that's changed, but
I don't have one.
yeah,
I
it's,
just got my Millwood address.
yeah.
I would encourage us all to kind of do a digital audit though, and I think most of us have been, but you would be available, can we reach out to you about some of that clarity? Cause I do know that there's some ambiguity on some of, especially board appointments, but I can completely understand why the previous mayor was using mayor at for that kind of business because he wouldn't have been on the board if he wasn't the
Yeah,
mayor.
That's why you were there. Yeah.
The good news, I'm not a voting member, but I guess it doesn't make a difference, so I am a member of the board. I just can't vote, which is kind of.
Why am I here? Why am I at this meeting, right? Yeah.
So what is it, just if you remember right off the top of your head for the years of retention of these things? I mean, you said 3 years because statute, but if you're looking at something that would go back further,
Yeah.
I mean, what would you suggest? 5, 7, 10?
Oh, I don't think you go beyond 7, right?
Is this like taxes, 7 years?
Yeah.
That's the golden number.
Yeah. I
Really?
don't think you go beyond
Good
7.
info.
But some of the documents that the city has to retain, the original ordinances, the original resolutions, original project documents,
Forever.
eternal,
Forever.
right? I think what we have found that's not, I think in the last few months, you've been able to kind of go back and try to piecemeal or recreate what may or may not have happened on certain things in the past, and we did that with Argonne project as well last year. So sometimes you luck out because the email is still there. Sometimes you just can't find it either. So it's a double-edged sword, but I don't think you'd ever, for your emails, I don't think you'd ever have to go back more than 7 years. I just know that 3 years kind of gets you into that safety zone of statute of limitations. And let's put it this way, if someone is still looking for documents 3 years later after an event, the city's probably gonna know about it. You're gonna know that there's a concern there, right? So that's probably a topic that as we go along, if somebody's upset about something, we talk about, okay, put a hold on these documents, litigation hold type of thing, put a hold on those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It is interesting is for water system, there's a whole list of records retention.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's probably, and when I'm doing that class, I'm saying, well, here's what that regulation, but you need to check in with your city and see what theirs are.
Yeah.
But it's basically sample resorts or reports, construction documents.
Yeah.
And all that stuff is supposed to be kept forever, some of those things forever.
Right.
Some of them got a very short turnaround, like fluoride reports. And I said, I wouldn't do that, I'd keep those forever.
Yeah. There are some core standards that say until the city deems it to be not relevant. Well, tomorrow, right? In some cases, that's exactly what it is, so. Meeting, this is an important one for OPMA, just to keep in mind, and we'll cover a couple slides on it. A meeting is not because you all get together. A meeting exists because of what happens when you all get together. So a meeting happens or takes place when there is action of the governing body. Action, important to understand, this is action. Discussion's action. Deliberations, considerations, review. You could all literally sit in a room, review a document, and not talk, and that's an action. So, final action, on the other hand, is a different term, and that's when you approve or take action on something. You say, we approve, we adopt the resolution, we adopt the ordinance. That has a whole nother level of OPMA considerations, but and I'll skip the quorum part. You lose a meeting when you lose a quorum. But let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So when does a meeting really happen? Let's say there's a neighborhood barbecue. All of you end up showing up in the barbecue unknowingly. You can either do the Kelly, you're over there, Dan, you're over there, Tina, you're over there, or you can just
Not talk about
not
business.
talk about business. That's exactly it. There was for a number of years, our neighboring jurisdiction of the south, council members just happened to get together at Yokes and meet and have coffee on the same day at the same time every week. That was kind of prearranged, and they admitted they just happened to be there to talk about city business. That's a problem, right? There was a careful scrutiny of when the Board of County Commissioners was only 3, there was a scrutiny about how could 2 county commissioners use a county vehicle and travel together to a meeting. I mean, are you just sitting there listening to the radio? What are you doing, right? And I think what it really goes to on this is perception becomes a reality. If you see a cluster of board members together talking, the perception is they got to be talking about something about the city. May not be, but that's the perception. Administrative staff meetings are not, because the administrative staff is not the governing body, right? So mayor holds a meeting with Public Works, the clerk, that's not subject to notice and public attendance. Telephone conversations and emails, that's something to be very mindful of. And again, you'll see, please do not reply all to this email if I send it out in bold and all caps. I've actually gotten to the point now, it's only taken me 20 years to realize you can send a blind CC and people can't reply to that. Yeah, oh, look at that. But I still put do not reply all, you know, if you have any questions, please contact me at my phone number. Because phone conversations amongst the three of you in a group call, that's a meeting. Kelly calls Dan, Dan calls Tina, that's a meeting, right? Serial calls that way. So, and that's, unfortunately, it happens unknowingly more than anything. It happens when, well, I just talked to Dan about this last week. I don't know. I'll give Tina a call, see what she thinks. Can't do it, right? Really makes the transaction of business hard. We've talked about this over the first few months of, well, how do I keep the council informed without calling them all at the same time or bringing them together? Or more importantly, what you've said, I want them to hear the same thing. It's impossible under the OPMA. So, that's.
But that doesn't mean I can't have individual meetings with you. It just means I can't try to
Bring y'all together.
bring y'all together and make it easier for myself.
Yeah.
Can I say, just because I agree with all this, obviously if we had a standing meeting on Wednesday at Starbucks, but we're not talking about business, that is suspect. But I don't think we should fear going to tree lighting ceremonies or fear to be going to Millwood Days on the off chance we might accidentally, cause we're all community too.
Or you just note it as a special meeting. If it happens, it happens. If the meeting happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There's two ways to look at that.
Or we just
But-
avoid each other.
Yeah, that creates a different perception though too, doesn't it?
Right?
Yeah. So, no, that's what I think. I think you just kind of think about it, Association of Washington Cities, conferences, that's another one of those examples. You should be there, and if you hear something that's a good idea, you should wanna go to a fellow council member and say, man, did you attend this conference or this session, they talked about this? You'll see more special meetings noted for the AWC conference, or for the fire districts, it's their annual fire district conference, or the Association of Counties, you'll see more special meetings noted on those weekends, just out of precaution more than anything. And it's a meeting that starts at 8 a.m. on Thursday and concludes when the conference is over at noon on Sunday. So just precautionary. And we'll get to why it's good to have the precautionary. Running out of time, let's go ahead and keep rolling through. Again, same rules apply for social media. It's really easy to want to post a comment on somebody's social media page if you're on social media. That has the same effect as a telephone call, serial meetings. Remote meetings, we've lived that. I don't think I have to hit on it too hard. COVID kind of finally got the law caught up with technology and the ability to hold remote meetings. We're now encouraged to do, Yahoo or telephone or YouTube, I guess, meetings. Again, my technology, I'm way behind. The one concern is if you note a meeting up and it's noted as remote access, what happens if the technology dies on you, right? That can create some problems in the middle of that meeting to try to accommodate remote attendance, so. Special meetings, a special meeting. Advance you want, that's okay, sorry, thank you. Oh, is it this one? Yeah, perfect, thank you. Special meeting, regular meeting is the meeting that you schedule that happens on the second Tuesday by city code. It happens at the second Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. Special meeting is anything that doesn't happen at 6 p.m. on the second Tuesday. 5 o'clock tonight was a special meeting. So that's the key. And there are some nuances that we're talking through in terms of special meetings and what you can't do. But really the key for a special meeting is if it's called, the special meeting can only take action on those items that's on the special meeting notice. Oh, you bet. Yeah, come on in. And it's gotta be noted 24 hours in advance. Let's keep cruising through here because I do wanna get to the, yeah, who can attend a meeting? Anybody. There's often a desire to want to, for some people who want to record the meetings for whatever reason. It's perfectly fine as long as it's not, intrusive or obstructs the meeting, which flies counter to the two-party consent recording rule in Washington, but by attending a public meeting, the OPMA says you're consenting to the ability to be recorded. Just had the incident, I kind of phrased that the wrong way, the occurrence, last week of a meeting where, a member of the media began to hit Zoom record at the beginning of the meeting. Hadn't had that pop up before, and the agency said, nope, deny the request, you can't do that, you gotta let it be recorded. So that's kind of how the new world operates now in recording meetings. Disruption of a meeting, there's a whole process for that. We've used it. We haven't had to use it for over a decade, which is great. But there's a process for calling for order. And usually that happens when people are wanting to talk over the council or interrupting the meeting or not allowing the meeting to occur. If that call for order doesn't work, the council would recess or adjourn that meeting to see if they could restore order. If that doesn't happen, which it has happened once in the history of Millwood, then we adjourn the meeting and we post a notice of reconvening of the meeting. The last time it happened, the only opportunity that the council could get together and restore the meeting was on a Friday night, February 14th. So everybody's Valentine's Day was not a good night that night, so, but that's the soonest they could get together and they had to take action on a couple items on the agenda, so. Rules, we do have some public comment rules, we have a system for public comments, preferably in writing or in advance of the meeting, but there's opportunity for public remarks at the end. Certainly something that's always can be evaluated by the city council and mayor, to reevaluate, how you wanna proceed. Can set reasonable limitations on public comments as well. You often see the 2 or 3 minute, request that speakers not repeat themselves or repeat what others said, but if there's kind of a group message, go ahead and convey it that way. There is executive sessions, we may ask for one this evening. And, but those are your opportunity, very limited opportunity to discuss certain things in executive session. No action ever taken in executive session. And the statute presumes that the presiding officer makes the announcement. I've always offered to every client I have to have the presiding officer of the meeting allow me to make the announcement, but I only do it at the presiding officer's request, because I've come to memorize RCW 423110 subsection 1I. So,
Verbatim.
yeah. This is the last slide I just wanted to talk about. There's another portion that's not required by law that we can talk about another time, which is just kind of the conflicts of interest and how you deal with that. This is the key to the OPMA though, is it's not city liability, it's personal liability. So again, getting together, having the coffee meeting, at a scheduled time, at a scheduled place to talk about city business can subject you to $500 for the first violation and $1,000 for any other violation thereafter. And that's out of your own pocket. The city doesn't reimburse you or indemnify you for that. And again, the hammer is there's always attorney's fees, right? It all comes back to attorney's fees. So that was a quick fly through. I'm happy to stay after and answer any individual questions you have, or we could follow up afterwards.
And I assume
individually.
that we can send this out to everybody?
Absolutely, yep.
Perfect. So, I'm gonna ask for the meeting to be adjourned.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.